There's a strange kind of silence that follows you into adulthood. It's not the silence of peace. It's the silence of something missing, something you can't quite name. You feel it when you're sitting with people, but your mind feels far away. You feel it when something good happens, and you expect to feel happy, but feel nothing instead. And you feel it when something goes wrong, and suddenly everything hurts at once. That silence is not emptiness, it's memory. It's the sound of a childhood you never fully lived. Most people think childhood is something you grow out of, like an old phase, like baby clothes, like training wheels. But the truth is, you never outgrow childhood. You carry it. It doesn't disappear when you turn 18. It doesn't vanish when you move out, get a job, start a family. It simply hides. It hides behind your habits, behind your fears, behind the way you react to things that seem small but feel overwhelming. It shows up in the way you attach to people, how quickly you get close, or how hard you keep your distance. It shows up in the way you avoid conflict, or the way conflict makes your chest tighten. It shows up in your need to be perfect, in your guilt when you rest, in that quiet feeling that you haven't earned peace yet. The truth is, your lost childhood doesn't disappear. It doesn't fade with time. It becomes the root of your suffering. When you were little, you weren't just learning facts. You weren't just learning language, numbers, or how to tie your shoes. You were learning who you needed to be to feel safe. You were learning what parts of you were acceptable, what parts got attention, what parts caused trouble. You were learning what kind of love was available and what kind wasn't. You were learning how much of yourself you were allowed to show before it cost you connection. And depending on what your world looked like back then, you learned different lessons. Some children learned that their feelings were welcome. Others learned that their feelings were inconvenient. Some learned that their needs mattered. Others learned that their needs were a burden. And when you learn the second lesson, something inside you starts to disappear. Not loudly, not all at once, quietly, slowly, almost politely. Maybe you became the responsible one, the child who grew up too fast, the one who took care of everyone else, praised for being so mature, when really you were just adapting. Maybe you became the quiet one, the one who learned that staying invisible was safer than being misunderstood. Maybe you became the entertainer, the one who kept people laughing, because laughter felt safer than conflict. Whoever you became, it wasn't random. It was survival. It was your nervous system saying, "This is how I stay loved. This is how I stay safe. This is how I belong." And it worked. It helped you survive childhood. But it came at a cost. The cost was your authenticity. You learned to hide parts of yourself so deeply that eventually you forgot they were there. But those parts didn't die. They didn't disappear. They waited, like unopened letters, addressed to the person you used to be. Those hidden parts of you didn't disappear. They stayed alive inside your nervous system, quiet, alert, watching. This is why adulthood can feel heavy without a clear reason. Psychology has studied this for decades. The emotional environment you grew up in didn't just shape your personality, it shaped your nervous system. If affection was inconsistent, if emotions were ignored, if love felt conditional, your brain adapted. It learned to anticipate rejection. It learned to numb pain before pain arrived. This is called adaptation. It's not weakness, it's intelligence. It's how a child survives an unsafe emotional environment. But here's the problem. What protects you in childhood can imprison you in adulthood. Because the patterns that once kept you safe don't update automatically. They keep running long after the danger is gone. Avoidance becomes isolation. Perfectionism becomes exhaustion. Overthinking becomes anxiety. You learn to suppress emotions, and suddenly you can't feel joy. You learn to overachieve, and rest feels like guilt. You learn to self-sacrifice, and relationships feel draining. The same walls that once protected you now block intimacy, creativity, and peace. This is why your reactions sometimes feel bigger than the moment. A small rejection can feel devastating, not because of today, but because it activates every moment you felt unwanted as a child. A small criticism can feel unbearable, not because of the words, but because it echoes every time you were made to feel not good enough. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. This is why telling yourself to just move on never works. Because you're not reacting to the present, you're reliving the past through your nervous system. This is also why so many people feel anxious, lonely, or disconnected, even when life looks stable from the outside. Because the human mind doesn't measure fulfillment by success or security. It measures it by wholeness, by how aligned your present self is with the child who once dreamed without fear. When you lose touch with that child, you don't just lose innocence, you lose wonder. You lose the ability to play, to rest, to forgive yourself. Life turns into performance, doing more, trying harder, proving your worth. But the ache remains, because what you're trying to earn now is the love you didn't receive back then. And here's something most people never realize. Your lost childhood isn't just about bad memories or missing experiences. It's about emotional interruptions, moments where your development froze, moments where something needed to be expressed but wasn't safe to express, so it stayed inside you, unprocessed. And unprocessed emotions don't disappear. They repeat. They recycle through triggers, through fears, through reactions that seem out of proportion. That's not immaturity. That's unfinished emotional work. Every adult who feels empty or anxious isn't broken. They're unfinished, trying to complete a story that was interrupted. And until that story is heard, the nervous system keeps reliving it. This is why the same patterns keep repeating in your life, not because you're broken, but because your nervous system is loyal to what it learned early. It keeps choosing what feels familiar, even when it hurts. This is why you might fear abandonment, but still push people away first. Why you crave closeness, but feel uncomfortable when someone actually gets close. Why love feels intense at the start, and unsafe once it becomes stable. Your body learned that love came with conditions. That connection could disappear at any moment, so it stays alert, scanning, preparing. This is also why you may struggle with boundaries. You either give too much or keep everyone at a distance. Because as a child, you didn't get to practice healthy boundaries. You learned survival roles instead. You learned to read the room, to sense moods, to adjust yourself before anyone asked. You learned to be easy, low maintenance, helpful, invisible, or impressive, and people praised you for it. They called you strong, mature, independent. But what they didn't see was what it cost you, because when you learn to abandon yourself early, self-abandonment feels normal later. This shows up in work too. You push yourself past exhaustion. You ignore your limits. You rest only when you're completely depleted. And even then, rest feels uncomfortable. It feels undeserved. Because somewhere inside you learned that worth comes from usefulness, from productivity, from being needed. This is why slowing down can feel threatening, because silence brings feelings, and feelings were never safe before. This is also why many adults struggle to feel joy, not because joy isn't there, but because their nervous system doesn't recognize safety without tension. Calm feels unfamiliar, peace feels boring, stability feels suspicious. So the body creates stress just to feel normal again. This is why you might find yourself overthinking small decisions, replaying conversations, analyzing tone, looking for hidden meaning. Because as a child, you had to predict reactions to stay safe. You learned to monitor instead of relax. And now your mind does it automatically. This isn't a personality flaw, it's conditioning. This is why relationships can feel exhausting. You're not just connecting with the present person. You're managing old fear, old roles, old expectations. You're trying to be lovable instead of being real. And the more you perform, the more disconnected you feel. Because real connection requires presence. And presence requires safety, something your nervous system never fully learned. This is also why achievement never fills the emptiness. You reach the goal, you get the validation, and for a moment, it feels good. But then the feeling fades, because the achievement was never the goal. It was the hope that someone would finally see you, finally choose you, finally stay. But external success can't repair internal absence. Only connection can, and not just with others, but with yourself, until you turn inward and listen to what was never heard. The same patterns will keep repeating. Different people, different jobs, different situations, same emotional response, because the wound hasn't been addressed yet. Here's the part most people never hear. Healing your lost childhood isn't about blaming your parents, it's not about reliving the past, and it's definitely not about rewriting memories. Healing is about giving context to what happened. It's about understanding that what you thought was weakness was actually adaptation. You weren't too sensitive, you weren't dramatic, you weren't broken. You were a child doing what you had to do to survive emotionally. And that matters, because once you understand that, shame starts to loosen its grip. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and you start asking, "What happened to me?" That shift changes everything. Psychology calls this process reparenting. It means learning to give yourself what you didn't receive when it mattered most. Not perfectly, not overnight, but consistently. It means learning to speak to yourself the way a safe adult should speak to a child, with patience, with curiosity, with compassion. Instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel this way," you learn to say, "Of course I feel this way. That makes sense." Instead of demanding perfection, you offer yourself permission. Permission to rest, permission to make mistakes, permission to need support. This doesn't make you weak, it makes you regulated, because regulation comes from safety, not pressure, not discipline, not self-criticism. This is why true healing often feels slow. Because you're not fixing a habit, you're teaching your nervous system that it no longer has to stay on guard, that it doesn't have to earn love, that rest won't lead to rejection, that presence won't lead to danger. And at first, this can feel uncomfortable, because calm might feel unfamiliar, silence might feel loud, gentleness might feel undeserved, but that discomfort isn't a sign you're doing it wrong, it's a sign you're doing something new. This is also where grief appears, not all at once, but quietly. You start to notice what you didn't get, moments you missed, needs that went unmet, versions of yourself that never got to exist fully. This grief is not regression, it's recognition. For the first time, you're not abandoning your younger self, you're sitting with them. And that matters more than any achievement, because emotions don't disappear when you ignore them, they dissolve when they're understood. This is why healing isn't about becoming someone new, it's about returning to parts of yourself that were frozen in time, returning to curiosity, to play, to rest without guilt, to joy without justification. As you practice this, something subtle changes. You stop reacting so quickly. You pause, you notice, you respond instead of defend. Your relationships soften, your boundaries strengthen, your nervous system starts learning a new language, the language of safety, and slowly, the silence inside you begins to change. It no longer feels empty, it feels spacious, it feels calm, it feels like room to breathe.